us gathered in His name. The world is all the same. There is love in this place, and ever two or more of us.
A pleasant night, morning, or afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Level Up Your Marriage with myself, Paul Blake from Jamaica, along with Raquel Blake, my wife. And we have another interesting discussion lined up for you tonight. We are actually continuing from our discussion previously on boundaries. And so tonight is part two of the importance of boundaries in the marital relationship. And we had a very good discussion the last time, and we got some interesting feedback and questions also. And so if you are joining tonight, wherever you're joining from, please feel free to participate, feel free to ask questions, feel free to comment as we look forward to having another engaging discussion on boundaries in marriage. Raquel, welcome again.
Thank you. Welcome to, I want to extend my welcome to all the listeners, and we are happy to be here. This is a safe space. This is a place where you get information, but we're also open to getting your questions and learning from you too. So we spoke about boundaries in general last time, and we were looking at types of boundaries, and we did physical boundaries, right?
Yes, and emotional boundaries.
Yes.
And so tonight we want to look at a couple more things. But before we get into the discussion, let us just do a recap of what boundaries are. So boundaries really are guidelines or limits that individuals or couples set within their relationship to protect their well-being, their autonomy, and also their integrity. And these boundaries define really what behaviors are acceptable or unacceptable. It helps to create a feeling of respect in the relationship, feeling of being valued, and also helps to create a safe space within the relationship. And the truth is, everywhere that we go in life, there is some sort of boundary that is set for us. Even from the beginning in creation, when God made Adam and Eve and He placed them in the garden, He gave them a boundary, right? He told them that you can do whatever you want to do in the garden, and you can eat whatever you want to eat. You can eat of all the trees, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that you shall not eat from that tree. And so God set a specific boundary for them, and we know what happened beyond that. Right? So boundaries are really a part of life. Boundaries are there for us. We set boundaries for our children to protect them. We set boundaries for them so that they can have a safe space in which to operate. And those of us who have children know. I remember one of the things that we, as parents, and even when I was growing up, when you had children in the house, and especially if you have those kind of houses that have stairs and high elevated high. When children start learning to walk, we used to put a piece of board or something across the doorway so that they would not fall fall outside of the house or fall down a step or something.
Yeah.
So in other words, you actually created a boundary for them,
Yeah, that was a physical
right?
boundary.
And that was a physical boundary.
Yeah.
And as they learn to walk and become more independent, we gradually remove those boundaries so that they can explore. But wherever we go in life, there are boundaries that are set for us. And so the last time we were discussing physical boundaries, the importance of respecting each other's need for personal space, the importance of respecting each other's need for having some kind of autonomy in the relationship and even over their own lives. Because as we said before, Raquel, the fact that the Bible says, yes, we are one in union, but it doesn't mean that we become twins. Right? So we don't become mirror images of each other. Right. So in other words, though we are functioning in a relationship and in a marriage, we are still expected to have our individuality. Right, we are expected to have our own likes and dislikes and our own ways of seeing things, and we don't always have to agree on every single detail. And so, a lot of times those things cause problems a lot of times because no, these boundaries are not discussed before the relationship gets serious.
Yeah.
And so we looked at the need for looking at even affection, understanding each other's level of need for affection, and how far is too far and all of that. And interestingly, and I hope we get to do look at sexual boundaries, probably not tonight, but in some other program. But there are boundaries for almost every aspect of our lives in the relationship, right? We also we took a look at emotional boundaries, and that was very important. The need for emotional support in the relationship, and the importance of being clear about how much emotional support you can offer, and also how much you need.
Yes.
Right? And we spoke about the fact that we can't leave it up to the other person to just know exactly what we want. Because
Yes, exactly.
life doesn't work like that. We have to express, right? You might be in a relationship with somebody who has a particular level of intimacy in terms of how they express intimacy, and the other person might not necessarily be willing to accept so much affection, if you want to put it that way. And that can cause problems.
Yeah.
And so these things need to come to the discussion as you get into the relationship, as the relationship progresses, and even after the wedding day takes place. There needs to be an ongoing discussion about how we feel about certain boundaries, and you know and I think sometimes too, we forget, Raquel, that as we grow in the relationship, our boundaries might even change.
Right. Based on that fact that individuals change, your needs change, and some of the boundaries that you had from the outset might be different after 15, 20, 30 years, 50 years of marriage.
Yes, yes.
One,
So
one of the points I want to uh, highlight here, which we mentioned the last time, was about that in terms of emotional expression, when we're talking about emotional boundaries, even the need for alone time
yes,
is important.
yes.
Persons get married and they think that you're gonna be two peas in a pod and you're gonna be Ernie and Bert and
Join at the hip.
join at the hip.
Siamese twins.
Right. And so, as we are talking about emotional boundaries, even alone time is one of those elements
Yes.
that would need to be discussed and agreed on, or you have some understanding about
Mhm.
how each person might spend their alone time, which is part of the emotional side of
Yes, yes.
setting
True.
boundaries.
So yes, get ready for this, for having this discussion. As we get as we launch off into the discussion, we want to start tonight looking at intellectual boundaries. And somebody may ask, why are we discussing intellectual boundaries? I mean, you don't take it for granted that it's two intelligent people who are in this relationship who ought to know how to function as intelligent people. Yeah, that is something that we often take for granted, right? And a lot of the times, because there's no discussion generated around these particular things in terms of our intellect, it ends up causing a serious problem and friction in the relationship. So when we talk about intellectual boundaries, Raquel, what we are looking at is people, couples, male and female, will have different opinions and beliefs about different subjects. Sometimes our belief system is shaped by our socialization. It can also be shaped by our culture. It can be shaped by our experiences. And so you can have two people coming into a relationship where sometimes their beliefs and opinions are on the opposite side of the spectrum. Um, we are looking at the discussion from the perspective of Christian marriages, but we also have to take into consideration that there are also Christians who are married to non-Christians. And sometimes the opinions and beliefs can also conflict with each other. And oftentimes they don't come up for discussion until there is a marriage taking place, and then problems arise. And sometimes in having these kind of discussions, Raquel, you realize that the person that you are married to, how far apart you are in your belief system, and even your opinion sometimes. So it will differ so much that we have seen people whose relationships are destroyed because of the disparity of the beliefs and opinions.
Right. So so it's a big deal. It's an important aspect of of preparing for marriage and continuing to have a healthy marriage. Because majority of one's uh, way of living, decision making rest on your opinions and your beliefs.
That's right.
And so if I'm not sure what your beliefs are regarding a certain topic, and you're not sure what my beliefs are regarding a certain topic, we're gonna have
But
we're gonna have
Raquel,
clashes.
seriously, Raquel, we are married and both of us are Christians. Shouldn't we be able to sit down and, well, do we really need to have this kind of discussion?
Of course.
We
Absolutely.
we
Because
believe in God. We believe in the Bible as God's authority. We love each other till death do us part, because that is what we committed to. So why should our opinions and beliefs now become such an issue that it begins now to disturb the relationship?
well, you see, if you want to make it as simple, or as simple as ABC, in the sense that I might like eating fish every day, but you might want pork. I'm just taking it down to something really
Yeah.
simple.
True.
That in terms of, so if I want to eat fish every day and you want to eat pork, then how is it's gonna be a conflict? Because if I prepare fish every day, not knowing that you like pork, or if I prepare pork every day for you, and then I'm not thinking about my own concerns and my own needs. So the element of your beliefs, because that shapes your worldview. It shapes how you make decisions. It's gonna shape the kind of relationship, the kind of marriage, the kind of the upbringing for the children and so on. So it's an important matter. But you spoke about why should it be important, and that is part of the folly. That is part of the demise of marriage, when persons don't take the time to talk about their beliefs, to share their beliefs, their opinions, and then you have a clash. And then sometimes this clash is so great that it affects so many other things. And so the idea is to this is one of those elements that should be upfront. It should be addressed in
Yeah.
the early
I
season,
agree.
at the
I
beginning.
agree. I agree. I
At the
agree.
beginning,
I agree. Remember, if you have a comment or question, you can type it in the chat, and we will recognize your comment, and we will also answer questions if there are questions. But here's another thing, Raquel. I believe that at the heart of opinions and beliefs in relationships is the element of being able to respect one another's opinions or beliefs, whether or not if we believe or even share those opinions. Because the truth is, we will never believe the same thing, and our opinions about different things will be different, right? That's a reality. And let me give you an example. I remember some years ago, I met a particular couple where both of them married for a very long time, but they had two very different political opinions and belief system when it came to politics. And it was such that one's political belief was on one side of the spectrum, and the other one's political belief was way over on the other side. But yet they were married for a very long time and shared a very good relationship. And I remember having the discussion with them, asking, because we have known persons who uh, share different political beliefs, and it caused serious problems in the relationship. But these two people were able to survive over 30 years having two different political opinions. And I remember the discussion that we had. What was said to me is that, look here, before we got married, we made a decision that our political beliefs will never interfere with our relationship. And so one of the things that used to happen is that they did not discuss politics in the house.
Well, the idea is that the reason for that, for their success, is that they shared it, they discussed it ahead of time.
So they set a boundary.
They set a boundary. Exactly. They set an intellectual boundary in respect of politics. And so, it makes a point.
Yeah.
It makes a point.
So to avoid the confrontation, to avoid the friction and the frustration and the anger that we know these kind of discussions can cause, the boundary was set that we will not discuss politics in this house, right? That might be to the extreme for some people, because a lot of people say, but can you really survive without discussing politics? But what for me is that it worked for them. And if it worked for them, fine. by all means, do it.
Yeah.
And so and I think this, Raquel, works for just about anything, right? Even on current affairs, several other things that we could look at, where sometimes even you and I don't have the same opinion about everything.
No, I don't.
You see something one way and I see it another way, right? But we don't allow our opinions and beliefs to impede on our relationship,
Right.
because we have set a boundary that says, look here, let us respect each other's beliefs and opinions. You don't have to agree with somebody to respect their opinion about something, even if the opinion is faulty. Right? And even if the belief is faulty, you can show respect, and you can honor and value what that person has to say or what they believe, by just mutual respect, right? True.
That's true. I agree. I agree. There's the big word there is respect. Sharing the views, opinions, respect that governs the process. And of course, when the element of sharing and respect are those two common elements, then when it comes to making decisions and enhancing the relationships, then you have, that's a good boundary.
Yeah, true.
That's
true.
a good boundary. So that's a good place to start.
And even as we look at the discussion, sometimes we look at boundaries as only those spaces that we ought not to pass or tread or trod or whatever. But even you can look at boundaries also as, I will look at decision making also is allowing each other the space. Because remember, boundaries is also about creating a safe space.
Right.
So it can also be allowing each other the space to breathe, to live, to make decisions that are in keeping with the best interest of the relationship, right? And some, you see, I think a part of the problem, Raquel, is that oftentimes we look at boundaries only from a negative space,
Yeah.
where it is always thou shall not, right? And don't. But boundaries are not just negative connotation. Boundaries can also have positive influences on them,
Definitely.
right? So we have to understand the place that it plays in our relationship, right? So we looked at intellectual boundaries, time boundaries, right? Boundaries that govern time, personal time, and also shared time. And you alluded to it earlier that the need for personal space in the relationship is important. And we started out by saying the fact that we are married don't mean that we are identical twins joined at the hip, right? It doesn't mean that everywhere I am, Raquel must be beside me, and I don't have any breathing space, right? And I'm glad we're having the discussion, Raquel, because this is one thing I have seen, affect relationships in more ways than one. Two ways, by the way. The misunderstanding of the need for time, right? Because we have seen couples get married too, and they don't give enough time to each other, right? True.
True.
And the other part is true. We have seen couples married and they don't give each other enough time away from
Enough
each other.
space. Enough.
Right? So
Exactly.
again,
So
so
there are two elements.
the two elements are very important.
Mhm.
And again, it comes back to having the discussion before the relationship progresses,
And
right?
even as the relationship is
And
progressing,
even as the relationship progresses.
it's gonna be it's one of those ingredients that like salt.
Mhm. So how much time is too much time?
For which one? Together or separate?
Together. How much time is too much time together? Is there anything else too much time?
I guess it depends on the individuals. I mean, what obtains for a couple, where you have one who is a doctor and one who is a police officer,
Yeah.
based on their
Yes,
lifestyle, based on
yes,
their
yes,
careers, then
yes.
so it's gonna be unique to each couple.
Yeah.
But the idea is that there must be a constant sharing. That of course that we want to spend time together. You're important to me. I'm important to you.
Yes.
And so the share time is important, that you dedicate some specific time,
Yes.
for togetherness, because sometimes it might not be the the quantity of time that is spent
With the
together, but the
quality of
quality of
time.
time,
Yeah.
you know.
So you would agree that couples need time apart?
Definitely.
Why?
What they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Since make the heart grow fonder.
And if we could talk about the importance of self-care, we spoke earlier about alone time, because it's by getting a chance to rejuvenate and
To explore your
to
hobbies
explore
and
your hobbies and explore
explore your
your
interests, right?
own interests.
Right. They are,
That
because
you
again, even looking at us, we married for 17 years. Uh there are some things that I like to do that you are not necessarily interested in. And that's all right,
it goes
right?
goes the
And
way
it
too.
goes the other way. There are some things that you are interested in that clearly I have no interest in. I will share in so at some time, but I won't be
No,
24/7,
exactly.
right? And so these kind of unique differences have to be realized. And even in terms of personal time, Raquel, we are also in our own counseling practice would have heard spouses complain about the fact that their spouse does not allow them the space to even interact with their friends. And the flip side of that is also true. We have heard couples complain that their spouse interact too much with their friends. so
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 the
there
word
has
that
to be a balance,
balance.
right? There has to
There
be a balance.
has to be a
You know
balance.
what, and especially with men, Raquel. And this is I am a man, so I can speak from the perspective of a man, especially if you are a man who you're active before your relationship. You played football with the guys. You played dominoes. You hung out in the evening for whatever, especially after work and all of that. And this was something that you would have been doing for most of your life, your adult life especially.
Yeah.
I think it is very unrealistic to ask your spouse to simply drop all of those things,
Yes,
because that is a part of him,
right, and this is the same thing that would obtain for the wife. That
right?
the wife can't, the husband can't expect that the wife always just gonna be at home and
Mm-hmm.
be preparing, taking care of the house and preparing the meals while he's out playing. And
Yeah.
he also has to respect the element that before he came into her life, she had things doing
Mm-hmm.
similar to him playing with doing the same thing about the personal space. You
So
know,
so you so
so there
do
must
I
be there must be a respect
do
for
I hear you
both
saying that
sides.
there must be a discussion as to how much space we are going to allow each other,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But it kind of sound like you want to control me, though.
But it's not like you wanted to control me too. So that's why I gladly put the balance in it,
Right?
because the idea is that, oh, if and many people would want to say, oh, the man, he used to play football with his friends and so, and he go to stop and have a little quality time with his friends. The same respect or the
Yeah.
same expectation should be there for the
So
wife
the so
too,
the discussion
right?
must take place.
Yes.
That is where it lies. That there has to
Where will the
be,
adjustment take
you know,
place?
and again, I deliberately use,
Yeah.
throwing the idea of control in the mix a while ago, because it is important for us to recognize that it is not about control, right? It's not, if two people have good intentions towards each other, having a discussion on how much personal time is allowed is not, it will never become a subject of control, but rather what is it that will help to better this relationship. Because you really don't want to be married to somebody, in a relationship with somebody where you feel as if, boy, you are being suffocated, right?
Right.
You have no time other than just to be in a space with this individual, right? You don't have, and it can get so bad, Raquel, that sometimes we talk about not spending time with friends. You have couples who also don't even want each other to spend time with family.
And so, and so I would hasten to say here, then that's a red flag, you know. And so that's, if the discussion is not had
Hmm.
before the marriage, or let's say you have the discussion before the marriage and you notice that, there's a resistance or there's a need for control, then that's a red flag.
That's true.
And
That's true.
that should be addressed,
That's true.
That's a red flag and that
That's
should be
true.
addressed.
Pauline Tate says, and that's where the element of trust comes in. It very important. Any discussion on boundaries must involve trust. You have to be, for I would say, you have to trust yourself, and you have to be willing to trust the other person. You have to be willing to trust the other person's intent,
True.
right? And we use that subject so many times in counseling, Raquel, where when we are counseling couples, we always have to point out to them that you have to trust each other's intent, trust each other's motive, right? Even in the case when problems arise, even sometimes problems out of miscommunication and all of that, we have to keep reminding couples that you have to remember the person that you are married to, and this person is not out to get you, right? Right. Yes, you might be having issues now, but at the heart of heart, this person is really, is your person, and has every good
Has your
motive
back.
to, yeah, I have your back,
Yeah.
so you can, you know leave yourself vulnerable. So and you don't have that unless you have the balance that is there before you, and the trust, and all of that. And not all that, not only that too. And many times we remove the element of the power of God in our relationship also, right? Because one of the things about boundaries, Raquel, and speaking from a Christian perspective, if as Christians we don't respect God's boundaries, then we will not respect our boundaries in the relationship either.
True.
Right? Or the basis of our boundaries come from the fact that we have a respect for God's boundaries.
True.
Right?
Correct. Amen.
Christian couples who have very little respect for God's boundaries are more prone to have relationship problems. Right? Because the minute we step outside of God's boundaries, it means that we are going to establish boundaries according to our own understanding. Right? God has boundaries for
needs.
God. Yes,
So selfishness gonna
God
kick
has
in there.
boundaries for our personal lives. He has boundaries for our relationship with Him. He has boundaries for how how we relate to other people. He has boundaries how we relate to our children. He has boundaries how we relate to our family. So our point of reference always has to come from what the Almighty God desires from us where boundaries are concerned. So we talked about personal time, but what about shared time, Raquel? uh Dedicate specific times for togetherness and ensuring quality time without distractions. So in other words, Raquel, I the husband, you can't leave your wife at home and go and play football for 6-10 hours and expect that when you come home and you're tired after a game of football, you're tired. So naturally when you come home, what you want to do, you want to rest, and you have neglected your spouse for all of that time. And when you come home, you want a hot meal, right? You want your bath water to be drawn and warm and right. You want a cool drink.
Say that, and this is something that don't, but and it relates to both sides, both husband and wife. Don't treat your spouse badly and and expect that you're gonna come and have everything is just gonna be in order.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, the element of cause and effect. What you reap is what you sow. Not
Yes.
that I'm not speaking about during those times when there's an agreement and discussion and so on, but um people shouldn't be unwise. The husband shouldn't be unwise, and the wife shouldn't be unwise in thinking that, okay, I'm just gonna take my husband and my wife for granted.
Yes.
Treat you badly, treat her poorly, treat him badly, treat him poorly, and then
Yes.
come home and expect that all will be well.
Yeah,
In which
true.
world?
That's right. True, true. I think this is Dexter's comment. When you speak of personal time, we need to make personal time for Yah, that's Yahweh, to build our spirituality and deepen our relationship with Him, and that's a very true thing. You know, if we don't take time, to develop our relationship personally with God, then it's also going to feed into the kind of issues we're going to have in our relationship.
Yes.
So when we talk about shared time, Raquel, there ought to be specific times that are set aside for coming together, right? As a couple, as a family, right? We must ensure that we put aside quality time for each other without distractions. And when we go into probably the digital boundaries, we
That's where we're
might
heading
we,
there.
we might yeah, so that's the
I
next the
think
next
that's a
thing,
segue,
right?
I think
No,
it's a
but
good
we
segue.
can't discuss time boundaries, okay, without looking at work-life balance.
Okay,
This is
okay.
where a lot of problems come in, right? Where one person is, we hear wives and husbands complain so much about their spouses spending so much time at work and so little time at home, right? We have couples who they spend far more time at work. Work can call at any time and they are out the door to do something at work. But if their spouse asks them to do something, it's an issue, right? So there must be a balance between life and home. We must set the boundary that is before. As you and I know, as counselors, we have to turn off our phones at certain times of the night, because if we don't turn off our phones, we'll have, as much as you tell clients that you're not available after certain hours, they still find time to call still, right?
So even setting boundaries with clients,
So
and
even setting,
is an important
yes,
element.
yes, and that's why I have two phones, right? Because I give clients one number and the other number. Anybody who needs to reach me knows how to reach me through that phone.
Yeah.
Because again, you you have to invest so much time and effort into you growing your relationship. Because in one of our previous discussions, Raquel, we talked about the fact that even having children, we have to remember that the children are going to leave the nest. They are going to become adults, go off on their own, hopefully, go off on their own. And when the nest is empty, the relationship is still there, or ought to still be there, right? And it is what you have invested in before or all along, coming up to that point, that's going to allow the relationship to survive, right?
Definitely. Just before you move on, though, you shared an example a while ago, where us as counselors, if a client is might be having an emergency, and probably out of norm makes a call, then it is the counselor's responsibility also to keep the boundary.
Yes, true.
So if the client is calling out of the normal time, then the counselor does need to answer, because you'd have set that boundary. So you spoke earlier that, we will get to that part where there are consequences when we set boundaries. Part of setting boundaries is that there are consequences.
Yeah.
It's easy for us to understand, or it's very relatable when we talk about children and boundaries, where when they don't
Yeah.
respect or keep the boundaries, that there are consequences. But it also applies in adult situations too.
Yeah.
We can
And we do make way for emergencies. We don't boundaries. Yeah, and that's another thing that we probably need to discuss. Boundaries are not necessarily static,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Boundaries can move, they can be adjusted based on need, right? So it's not a one size fit all kind of thing, right?
There's
So
some element of flexibility.
and there has to be some element of flexibility. All right, so the big one now, Raquel, digital boundaries, and the social media age has made this one so very important. I keep having this discussion with couples where the phones are wrecking the relationship, the phones especially, right? The internet is wrecking the relationship. At one point in time, we only had Facebook. Now we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have FaceTime, we have Snapchat, and I guarantee you, probably by tomorrow morning, wake up, there might be another one, right? So and they're not going away anytime soon, right? They are there for our usage. They serve a purpose, but we must know how to use them, especially when it comes to our relationships.
So how do you suggest that somebody navigates where if one partner understands the matter of digital boundary, and that, okay, during our shared time, we would put away the phone, because when we spoke about shared time, we spoke that it's dedicated time for togetherness without distraction. But of course, the phone is one a big element of distraction. So how would you help a couple, or a wife or a husband who shares that, one partner is not really mindful of the digital boundary?
Well, yeah, me probably first have a find the person have an addiction. That's it might, I mean, it might be an addiction. I think, Raquel, many of us is not even from the social media perspective, but its boundaries begin with having the ability to govern self.
Yes.
Because if it is not social media, it's going to be something else,
Yeah. Must have a balance. If
right? So
somebody has
yes, Gracie Vincent said must
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 have a
have a balance,
balance.
right?
Yeah.
So it for me it begins with the ability to govern oneself, right? Because you can also not be in a relationship and have a social media boundary problem,
Yes, that's true.
right? You can be alone by yourself
True, true, true. True, true, true.
and have a digital boundary problem. So it
Mm-hmm.
begins for me with learning how to govern oneself. So for couples, must establish rules for social media, right? And somebody may find that kind of very far out. So as adults, why do we need um a rule for social media in the house? Let us look at it in a practical way. Do you know how many couples we have complaining that the phone sleeps on the bedside table, and as they wake up, before even giving God thanks, the hand reaches over, and what happens? They pick up the phone, and they don't even go to a Bible verse when they pick up the phone. The first thing is to check Facebook, or to check Instagram, or to check what is on TikTok, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those things are creating real problems in relationships, right? I've had couples complaining that boy, you're sitting beside somebody trying to have a conversation and the person on TikTok.
No, but right, or you know, let's say you go for lunch
you,
and
you go for lunch.
we have been out and we see people sitting together and the phone,
uh,
they're doing a
Taking
selfie
a
and then
selfie, and all of that,
and the other person is trying to have a conversation.
and but not only that, Raquel, you have two people going out and they are supposed to be on a date, and the two of them on their phones.
Are they texting each other?
And texting. I mean, I kind of I find that one even so ridiculous that I don't understand how two people can sit on at a table texting each other. It just don't make a lot of sense to me.
Right, and so that's that leads me to the point, or that we have to be insistent on these things.
Yeah,
We have to be insistent, and insistent doesn't mean being aggressive. Just mean taking a firm stand.
that's right.
You know,
True.
taking a firm stand, and that these are this is what I've noticed.
Yes.
What
Yes.
change can we make? What are you willing to agree to? And holding each other accountable.
Yeah. And Raquel, there's also the important thing of how much information do we share on these
Right.
social
Yes.
media
Thanks for coming back to that. Yes.
platforms.
Thanks for coming back to
How
that.
much information do we share? Do we need to share every detail of our lives, right? I didn't know that I had reached the point as a marriage officer, when I'm doing a wedding, that the bride and groom has to put out a notice at the wedding that no pictures must be shared of their
Mm,
day until they
they
share
share
it.
it.
I thought that was a given. I thought that people had the good sense of protecting other people's personal space, and know that you don't post people wedding day, and
Pictures and so on
and pictures and so on. And
until after they
it
have
it, it, it baffles me.
no, but it gets worse because when you have motor vehicle accidents and so on, people taking pictures of the people are injured, and
Yeah.
even before the families are notified that somebody is in an accident, it might be on
Yes,
Facebook, so
and I have seen wives and husbands have quarrel at home, and one of them posted to social media that they quarreled their spouse this morning, and they argue over this and argue over that, and they don't know if the spouse is going to speak to them for the rest of the day, and all
you know
and, and
so
I'm
so
and I'm
how
saying,
so how do we help persons with that kind of struggle?
set your boundaries.
So, but they set them, but they don't comply.
Yeah, but
How you
but
go?
it comes back to what I said before. You have to govern self before.
Yeah, man.
You
So how?
have you have to respect the person that you're with. That there are some things in the relationship that are sacred, right? That must be something that is agreed on. Yeah, you and I have an agreement that there are some things that we don't post on social media, right?
So suppose one of us don't comply with that
Don't do
agreement.
that. Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. It's a challenge, and so it's about standing firm and so on.
It is about having the agreement that
Yes.
you don't step outside of this thing, because, and again, it comes back to mutual respect,
Yes, man. And all hope is not lost if it happens. It's just
right?
a matter of reminding and encouraging, and you don't have to be a force, but
And
just to say,
for me, Raquel, the truth is, if the boundaries are set and understood, and I'm not suggesting that it will not happen at all, but if the boundaries are set and understood, it is less likely that it will
yes,
happen.
yes, let's like that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Right. So there has to be that kind of agreement that people have. The need for privacy, for respecting each other's space in messages, and so forth. And even this element, Raquel, where um how much of our information do we share with each other in terms of our emails, our phones, what is it that I'm comfortable with where my phone is concerned, right? We operate on the basis that my phone is always thrown down all about the place, and if it rings, anybody can answer it, because that is, I don't have anything on my phone that is incriminating. I mean, I have no really time for that. But
But if it's incriminating, it is is your phone, and so persons,
true,
and so as we are saying is that um once there's discussion and
yeah,
agreement that because you have persons who search each other's phone without the
yeah.
other person knowing,
And
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 that
that
is
is something
that
that I will never agree
right.
with.
That's not something
You know,
exactly. So
we must respect one another, in our personal space, and especially when it comes, you don't check people's phones and emails, and all of that. There should be that level of trust where that does not need to happen. If it is that you are in a relationship and you're functioning on that basis, then something is seriously wrong,
correct.
and that needs to be addressed. So there's a respect for privacy, and all of that. That is important. Uh, financial.
Financial,
Want to the financial boundaries too?
I think it's important.
Yeah, we know this one cause whole heap of
Right.
problems. The
Yes.
financial boundaries. One person spends money like it is what they are drinking water.
It's hot. The time is hot. They have
Uh,
to drink a lot of water.
and the other person is Scrooge.
you know.
No,
So this
right?
one,
Yeah. So
this one is a big one.
yes, so you have. I think it is necessary for couples to discuss spending habits. Have a conversation about what are your spending habits. Right? Do you like to save money, or do you like to just spend it as if it is no tomorrow?
Or sometimes, or as you talk about financial priorities, what might be a priority for me
Might not
might
be.
not be a
Yes,
priority for
true,
you. So
true.
there must be an understanding that
Are we going to live and operate on a budget?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Are we going to give each other an allowance? Or is the husband going to allow the wife to spend the money and give him an allowance? Right?
Or you agree that I handle this, you handle this, but we make sure
Or
that
there has to
everything
be,
is taken care
yes,
of.
and in this day and age, when we're not talking about shared expenses, right? I don't know when we got to this point, and it's still something that makes me uncomfortable, where we have to be discussing with couples that, well, if it works for you, it works for you. I
Yes.
think there are different strokes for different folks, and what works for one person will not necessarily work for another person. But for me, Raquel, it makes me uncomfortable to have to discuss with my spouse, you, that, boy, it is your responsibility to pay these bills, and it is my responsibility to pay these bills. I I I I can't really wrap my mind around that. when I think of marriage, I think of marriage as a unit. You know, both of us are together. So you don't have your expenses and me have my own. We have our expenses, right? And whatever money we make in the relationship is going towards our expenses, which also means that I should not incur any debt that you don't know, right? And you should not incur any debt that I don't know. There must be a discussion as to how we are going to move this relationship forward financially, where um, when we incur debt, how do we pay it off, right? When there's an emergency, how do we address the emergency? When we have to travel for vacation, how are we going to travel? How much money are we going to spend when we travel?
Yes,
All of those things are important.
yes.
And I find that many times couples don't take the time to discuss these things. They kind of just take it for granted that you working, me working, and somehow the money going to spend.
Right. Or some people have that. Okay, my money is my money, but your
And
money
then
is our money.
somebody's then we have the other belief your money is my money, and my money is
Our
my
money.
money.
You know, so
All kind of different things.
exactly.
All kind of
So
different
there has to
things.
be, you know, and sometimes persons might be timid
Mm-hmm.
to to broach this topic.
Yeah.
So you know, it's important that to use the help use the
Yes.
help of somebody who is trained, use a
Mm-hmm.
counselor to help to navigate topics like these if there is some kind of timidity or you know in terms of addressing a topic like this. Because really, as you know, probably research and so on has shown that the money and the finances can really can have
No,
a negative impact on
yeah, man,
marriages and on
mash
relationships.
up relationship,
Yeah, yeah. So
wreck relationships,
yeah,
right? So there has to be that discussion, shared expenses, financial independence, and as you know, we have been in the field of relationship counseling, and we know that 90% of our couples, more than 90%, their whole desire is to become financially independent, right? So there has to be that discussion as to how we are going to navigate this space. Then there's also another thing that works for a lot of persons that again it doesn't work for everybody. Where when they do get married, there is a there should be a discussion as to whether or not the husband is going to work and the wife stays home and look after the children. And we know a lot of people are opting for that now, especially from a Christian perspective. And it works for a lot of persons. But I also believe that it is not something that ought to be taken for granted. Right? If take for instance, if you had that intention before we got married, Raquel, you don't wait until we get married for you to tell me that it is not your intention to work. Right?
no, but
You
you see,
you want to be a stay-at-home wife. And I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with it, by the way. What I'm saying is that the discussion needs to take place before the marriage happens.
before the
Right?
agreement is
Yeah,
made.
exactly. So you have well, whether or not you want to make preparation or what, because um I think that there are many men who would opt for working and allowing their spouses to stay home and look after the children. I don't think many men have a problem with that. But at least you need some time to prepare for it.
Right, but you see, so there must be some discussion, and also you know, so you have an element of sharing, and then you also have an element of asking, you know, because
True.
it's a mutual thing, like it's a dance, you know. I might say I share something, you ask to clarify, or what are your views? What do you want to do? So you know, there's a combination of asking and sharing and asking, because it shouldn't be assumed that okay, I one person will just be telling, but if the other person should also be asking, so that's why you have it's a conversation.
Yes. Yeah, yes. And we are always going to go back to that. It
It
is
is a
a
conversation. Right.
conversation.
It's not one-sided
Right?
where the wife or the female is asking or telling or demanding. And, you know, so it's a conversation where both persons are
Yes.
sharing and asking questions, getting information, and adding to the
Church of
conversation.
Christ, Runaway Bay.
Yes.
Great program counselors, thank you. I suspect I know who that is. Good evening, and we are happy to have you on tonight. And as always, if you have a question, if you have a comment, please feel free to type in the chat, and we will acknowledge you. So we talked about financial boundaries, Raquel, but let us segue a little bit now.
Yeah.
How do we go about establishing these boundaries? Because it's one thing to discuss boundaries and the importance of having boundaries, but how do we go about establishing these boundaries? And I think we have covered much of that one already. It begins with communication.
Yes.
Right?
What are you communicating?
Well, your needs and your how you see things. All of those things are important. So you have to openly discuss your needs and expectations. Right? I can't know your mind if you don't tell me. I can assume.
But that doesn't
Right?
that's not a good thing.
And we know,
right?
and we know what assumptions does.
Yeah.
Right? So I cannot assume. Right? If you have a particular belief system about something, in terms of how a relationship functions, then I can't know that unless we have the discussion.
Yes.
You might have certain expectations of me as a husband that you expect me to know, because man, I'm a Christian man, and I'm intelligent, or should be intelligent enough to know. But you can't take that for granted either, right? So there has to be a discussion regarding our expectations and our needs, and not only should there be a discussion, but it has to be clear.
Definitely. And then the I think we alluded to it earlier, is that there has to be active listening.
Yes, true.
Listening and not listening and trying to have an answer before you finish hearing. So active listening is waiting to hear, understand what is being said, and if there's any need for clarification.
Yes.
So the active listening is that you're paying attention, you're in tune, right, with the partner's needs, what they're speaking about, what they're sharing, so that you can understand first, rather than try to be defensive or try to be reactive. Sometimes persons, rather than
I agree.
listening actively, they are listening with a manner that they're going to be reactive. I'm trying to kind of become defensive.
Yes.
So there's a difference with active listening.
So communication. The second one is negotiation.
Yeah.
Compromise has to be a part of the discussion, because as we have the discussion about boundaries, we talk we spoke about beliefs and opinions being different.
Yeah.
So you might decide that this is a boundary that we want to establish, but one of us might disagree on the boundary. Right? You might see that it is important for this boundary to be set in this way, but I might probably want to shift the boundary a little bit further or a little bit nearer. Right? So our opinions and beliefs might not be the same, and that is where compromise comes in. Right? So we don't see it the same way, but can we establish the boundary with a compromise that both of us come away be benefiting from it?
Yes.
Right? Because here's another important thing, Raquel. As we set the boundary in our relationship, one person must not feel cheated.
True.
Right? The other person must not feel undervalued.
Yeah. So both persons have
right?
to be.
Both persons have to be able to benefit from the boundary that is established.
There must be mutual benefits.
Right. There must be mutual benefit, and that is a lot of times where compromise comes in, right? And we often look at compromise as a bad thing. Compromise is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you can compromise in something that's going to benefit you.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes you have to also understand that in compromising, you might not necessarily get the full benefit either, but the full benefit will come over time. Right? So it is important to be, and as I think about boundary, Raquel, the other thing is about flexibility.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Be having the willingness to address the boundary as needed. Because many of us, in terms of how we operate in our relationship, we are so inflexible, right? We're rigid, when we hold to something, we're not moving from it, right?
Yeah.
And I especially find this problem with men, Raquel, right? And I think I've counseled enough men to draw that conclusion. The whole idea of just being, and especially when we see things from a biblical perspective, and we think that it is God who said, and when we hold on to those things, we're not moving. And you know what is sad? Even when it is not benefiting us, we are sometimes, we just have that level of inflexibility.
Yeah, because you see, exactly, so we have to be mindful that, as we said, circumstances change,
Mm-hmm.
individuals change, and the dynamics in your family changes over time.
Mm-hmm. True.
In the
True.
first year when you just got married, you're adjusting, you're learning, and probably in year 5 when you have children present and so on, things the different boundaries will need to be
Yes,
adjusted
true. So you
based
must
on
be open to
based
change.
on the
Yeah. Yeah.
circumstances, based on new information. And so this element of flexibility, it has to be that has to be one of those tools
Mm-hmm.
that couples
So
keep in their
we
mind,
said that bones are not
not
static,
static. Yeah.
right? They're not set in stone, right? And even, as I think about land, and thinking about even my father, and sometimes you plant a peg somewhere, and over time you realize that you have to move the peg somewhere else,
Yeah.
right? There's a particular boundary that remains in place, but in order to be able to use your
The
property
space.
as needed, sometimes you have to move certain boundaries. They're not, so you don't put down a peg somewhere, and you think that is going to be there for 100 years, because as time goes by and you have different uses for the space, you might have to shift a peg or two. The same thing comes in terms of our relationship, that as our relationship progresses, we have to understand that boundaries change. And
Yes.
we must be flexible enough to understand that we have to change our boundaries based on circumstances and even new understanding. And I think that this one is very important. How many times as we start off our relationship, especially with our spouses, we have some faulty thinking.
Yes.
And especially a lot of these things come from how we were socialized, right?
And then they weren't ever
They
challenged
were
or
never
questioned.
challenged,
Right, or
right?
questioned.
And we just take them onto ourselves and we bring them into our relationship. And if we're not careful, we use these very things to destroy our relationships. Right? So we must, as we have new understanding, that sheds new light on our relationship, we must also be willing to adjust our
As needed.
boundaries,
Yeah.
right,
Exactly.
as much as they are needed.
Yeah.
So that we talked about communication and
Negotiation.
negotiation. There's also the element of reinforcement,
Yeah.
because the truth is, a boundary does not make sense if it is not reinforced.
Right. That's what we were talking about in terms of consequences. What
Yes,
happens? What
consequences.
happens if its boundary is not respected?
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Mhm. And Raquel, we understand this especially with children.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier.
We don't,
We
we don't have
care.
we have no problem setting boundaries for our children, and when they run afoul of the boundaries, we give them the consequences, not understanding that this principle also applies to our relationships, right?
Just a barely the different consequence, right?
Yeah, just a different, yeah, just a different consequence.
Yeah.
So there must be consistency in how we go about establishing boundaries. The consistency in respecting each other, it helps to build trust, and so forth. And I think of this, Raquel. Take for instance, we looked at the social media part, and the example that I used was having the phone by the bedside,
Bedside.
and as you wake up, you're on the phone, and all of that. And let us say that we decide, all right, so one of the things that we are going to do is that you remove the phone out of the bedroom, put it somewhere else for the night. And you do that one night. And it works well for one night. But on the third night, the phone ends up back on the nightstand, and it gets turned on in the morning. You have not reinforced the boundary.
Right. So that's why it's
So it must be
consistency.
consistent.
So you
right?
exactly.
So if you move it night one, it must also be moved night two.
Right. And if I see it, if it comes back, let's say if you come back in the
And,
room on night three,
and
then
if
I
it
have to give you
yeah
again a
if it if
reminder,
it if
little
it if it drifts back into the room,
by accident.
by accident, consistency demands that it must be addressed. You don't just leave it
Exactly.
like that. And we understand that. We understand that with especially our children, Raquel. But when it comes to applying that same kind of principle to our relationships, oftentimes we don't do it. So there must be consistency. There must be gentle reminders, right? Provide, gentle reminders if boundaries are unintentionally crossed. And I like that element of unintentionally crossed.
Right. I was gonna support that point too, because sometimes it's just by habit.
Just
Because
by
it's just
habit.
because
Yeah. You're used to doing something,
right.
and you just automatically fall in line to doing it. And it's not a lot of times, it's not intentional.
So just in the same way, you're trying to break an old habit to form a new habit.
Yes,
You have
yes.
to the element
And
of
and, and, and we
consistency
know
and
we know
gentle
we know the
reminders.
principle of forming habits already.
Yeah.
The researchers will tell you that in order to form a habit, you have to practice for about 90 days
Yeah.
before it becomes a habit, right? So you don't necessarily start something today and hope that it is going to change tomorrow. You have to consistently do that, and which is why reinforcement is important, right? You always have to reinforce. And we spoke about the element of respect already, right? Show respect for boundaries without judgment or criticism. That's big, big, right? Show respect for boundaries without judgment or criticism. And even the example that you used a while ago. If it happens that you fall,
You went back into the
went back
old
into
habit
the
that you're
old
trying to
habit,
break.
it's not for you to pass judgment or to criticize, right? And that's what I think that's where the gentle reminder comes in. So rather than be judgmental or criticize, you give a gentle, and that's why the Bible reminds us that we must speak in love, right? Let your speech be seasoned with salt.
Yes.
Right? There is nothing that destroys a relationship more than judgment and criticism, and worse when it comes to discussing boundaries.
True.
Right? So that's very important.
True.
So how do we respect boundaries, Raquel?
Well, it's important that you talk about being aware, being aware of yourself as an individual, but also being aware of your spouse as well. You have to pay attention when you talk about awareness. It comes down to paying attention.
Yes, true.
Being keen, being in tune, because you're gonna have some cues. You're gonna have verbal cues, non-verbal cues regarding boundaries. So if I see you breaking a boundary, or if I see you, or if I find myself breaking a boundary, I might see a non-verbal reaction from you.
It's interesting, Raquel, because I don't think this is in our discussion, but boundaries regarding social interaction.
Yeah.
And especially with people of the opposite sex. And I think this is where verbal and non-verbal cues come in.
Yeah.
Because we have to admit, we live in a real world, right? And we function with real people. And I can remember being in an atmosphere where you probably have a couple that you're at a function with other couples, and somebody shows somebody a little bit too much attention, and the other person might very well be unaware that this person is showing them a little bit too much affection or attention, and it might be just a look from the spouse that brings that person back to reality, right? And a lot of this can happen unconsciously, so I am not suggesting that it's something that's done deliberately, but I believe that as couples we must have our verbal and non-verbal cues,
Right, but you
right?
see, yeah, I'm agreeing. But it's, as you said, it's a case where you have to be aware.
True.
So I have to be insightful and understand your body language,
Yes, true.
and you have to also be insightful and understand my body language.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
And it's not only with that, Raquel, because you can also be in a space where let us say that you are in a space where you are experiencing a level of discomfort for whatever reason. I think it's important for your spouse to recognize you being uncomfortable in a situation.
Yes.
Um, and especially if it is a situation where you need to be removed from the situation. I believe that couples are to be so in tune with each other that you are able to pick up these non-verbal cues. And if you need to remove your spouse from that situation,
come to the spouse's rescue.
Exactly. Right. So and again, all of those things can only happen if you set proper boundaries in place, right? So it's amazing how our discussion, in having this kind of discussion, we can talk about so many different things that are relevant to developing and building our relationships, right? Yeah. So again, in setting boundaries, part of the idea of awareness too is ask for clarification if you don't understand. Don't allow your spouse to set your boundary that you don't understand. Well, sometimes him never understand either. Right? A couple set boundaries for themselves that neither of them understand. Huh?
How would I do that?
You would be surprised, Raquel. Right? You have persons will set boundaries that they are not clear on, right? Because possibly they have not even thought through the entire thing, but they will go and set the boundary for the spouse. How can you set up a boundary that you don't understand it fully, and the person that is brought into the space don't understand it either, right? So in other words, the discussion for clarity must take place. So in both of you ought to understand clearly the boundaries that have been set.
That's correct.
Right? I don't believe that when you set boundaries is something that you're supposed to be figuring out along the way. I think that is that leaves room for many other things that you don't necessarily want.
So
Right?
yeah, it's an element of just trying to keep it simple. Try to keep it simple. Try to keep it clear. And if it's not simple and clear to you, then ask for clarification. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so you're suggesting that the best way to set boundaries is actually to keep it simple.
Yes, keep it simple.
Don't overcomplicate it. That's true.
Keep it simple and because the idea is that the boundaries, as you said earlier, the boundary is not always a do not.
Yeah.
It can be something that is that brings great value, that brings
Yes.
great joy to
True,
both person.
True. Yeah.
And so it's if it's clear, if it's simple, and just in case it's not clear or simple, then it's okay to say, let us talk about this again. It's not so clear to me.
Yes.
Let us delve a little bit more into it so
Yeah.
that we can break it down for clarification.
True. Yes.
Which as it leads now to the matter of taking responsibility, I guess, from two sides. If when couples set boundaries, then each person has to agree to to want to work towards maintaining that boundary.
Yes.
But
True.
the other side is that in the event that I violate a boundary unintentionally, that I can say, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I didn't mean that.
Yes.
I and make an effort to correct it. So responsibility the element of responsibility works on both sides. You agree?
Yes, I would also want to add that for boundaries to work is that you can't be too much into yourself, right? You
Correct.
have you can't be the boundaries is not just for your benefit alone. The boundary is for the betterment of the relationship, which means that you can't be too much into yourself. And if you violate a boundary, then there ought to be some level of humility that's going to allow you to be able to apologize, or to ask for clarity, or something like that. So those are important. And Raquel, as long as boundaries are there, I think that because of the fact that we are human beings, we are going to unintentionally sometimes step outside
Step
of
out of
them.
the room. Yeah. True.
We're
True.
going to unconsciously step outside of them, right? And grace must be given, right? Grace, I think it is important for us to exercise grace. I had to ask a couple since week, when in listening to them, and my question was, how much grace do we exercise with each other?
Yeah.
Right? You can't just sit and wait for somebody. In many times in relationships, it's like we have people just sitting down waiting for somebody to run afoul of the law, as if we get some personal celebration out of persons. You have to exercise grace, right? That is important, right? So if you have learned nothing tonight from our discussion, couples, please learn how to exercise grace, right? That is important. Jesus says, to whom much is given, much is
Required.
required.
True.
And we know that when we run afoul of the law, we want grace. There's nobody that ball for grace more than us. But are we willing to exercise the same grace towards somebody else? That is important, right? So, examples of boundaries.
Yes, I think that might be a good place for us as we are approaching the end, for
Hmm.
us to kind of share examples of, what a boundary statement might sound like,
Yes.
different in different ways. We spoke about personal boundaries, we spoke about emotional boundaries, digital boundaries, and in the social setting. So we want to share at least one or two examples of boundaries, so that it becomes real, so that discussion you take it from just not with a discussion or conversation to how you can apply it to your own marriage, to
Hmm.
your own circumstance. So give us an example of a boundary.
Personal space. I,
Yeah.
I I need some alone time after work to decompress before we talk about our day. And this is one that comes up real for me all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and it's something that I have to remind husbands about ever so often, that our wives need that time to unwind, to unburden. So when they come home, they need to tell us about their day.
But you have to be prepared to listen.
And we
So
have to be prepared to listen. So, and we would have had the discussion, Raquel. We make an agreement that, all right, I will listen, but not for 1 hour, right? Because we know that, especially as men, after about 5-10 minutes, you know how that go, right?
I think 5 10 minutes are a little too short.
Well, let us say 15, right? So yeah, your wife comes in, she wants that time, you give it to her, but there's an agreement that the discussion, or the listening, not the discussion, the listening is going to last for 15 minutes,
Right,
right?
but
And
also,
after 15 minutes we take a break.
so that's one example, and then I guess another example, which I guess your example could also work
Mhm.
for that. You know, the example was, I need some time after work to
To
decompress before we
decompress.
talk about our day. So,
Yes.
you know, I wouldn't be spilling my, whether husband or wife, as soon as you walk through the door, before you put on your bag,
You
you
know,
wouldn't be
you
you,
know, you
you
know
wouldn't be
what, that the boss did to me this
right.
morning.
So it's important that, that one is that you express it, but you also respect it.
And that's why the mutual discussion is
It's
important.
important.
What's emotional sharing as a boundary?
Well, here's an example. It's one that says, "I'm not ready to discuss that issue right now. Can we revisit it later?"
Yes, that's a good one. And I would want to add to this though, that if you say, can we revisit it later, there must be time to revisit
So
it.
you honor that statement.
Right?
Honor the
Yeah, so you must honor the statement,
yeah.
right? And there's nothing wrong, and we keep having to tell couples this. There's nothing wrong in putting off a conversation, right? Sometimes couples look at it as a sign of being not interested. Sometimes even people look at it as even being disrespectful when persons ask that you don't have a particular conversation then and there. But there's nothing wrong with it. My whole thing though is that if you say that you need time to process, especially when men like to process. If you say that you need time to process, when you have process, you need to come back and have the discussion. Right, that is very important. Digital privacy.
What you have to say about that one?
Yeah, and I said it
We said it
before.
earlier.
Yeah,
We
I
said
said
it
it before.
earlier. So that example.
Please do not go through my phone without asking. Yeah, and it's something that I strongly believe. Persons person will have all kind of arguments that, boy, because I don't trust the person, I have to go through the phone, I have to go through the diary because I see some signs. You see, but that's not where the problem lies, right? Even before your need to look through a phone, there's something wrong before that. That is just the end result of things that would have happened before.
True.
Right? So I think as couples, we need to respect each other's space like that. Where if your wife should not be searching through your phone and you should not be going through her phone, right? If you can't establish that level of trust in your relationship, then something is wrong.
True.
Right?
True.
And the last one, Raquel, social activities. Well, how do you give me an example
So
of that one?
a good example, which we spoke about earlier too, is that I'm not comfortable with us posting about our private life on social media.
Yes.
So that's clear. That boundary is clear. You're saying I'm not comfortable with posting about our private life on social media.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I maybe not on. We're on the other side of life, Raquel, where posting on social media, especially our personal stuff, is not our thing. But we have a whole new generation of people that social media is like living and breathing. And anything can be posted and should be posted, no matter how personal or private. We have to tell persons, especially in relationships, that some of these things that might seem so harmless now can come back to haunt you in the future.
Yes.
So you ought to be very careful of what you post from your personal life.
Right. And also, talk about respecting your spouse's request.
Exactly.
Respecting your spouse's request.
And even that, Raquel, sometimes we have to even consider our children.
Yeah, definitely.
What we may post as a couple on social media that we are comfortable with might also make our children uncomfortable.
Yeah, so we have to look at the big picture.
So we have to look at the big picture.
Right, and I guess to add a little more to it, we talk about in terms of your jobs, in terms of, but even in when you apply for visas and so on.
Yes.
so it's a matter that
talk
about digital privacy.
Yes,
it's a big matter. So it's a matter of stopping and thinking.
Yes,
about
the embassies now are requesting people's digital footprint. When you go to the embassy.
Yeah. So boundaries,
right? So
such a rounded topic, important. A broad topic.
Yeah.
That's
and it's not just about setting boundaries in marriage. You have to also set boundaries for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about the fact that even before you can talk about the boundaries in marriage, you have to have your own personal boundaries.
Yes.
You have to be governed by a set of rules and all of that. That is going to carry you into the relationship. That will also help to make a better relationship. All
Yeah.
right. So we have had wonderful discussion tonight, and I pray that you would have learned a whole lot from us, in this engagement. Thank you, Raquel, for being involved in this discussion in level up your marriage.
Thank you, Paul,
All right, and
for leading.
we are coming from the island of Jamaica. Raquel and I have been married for 17 years, and 17 years going on strong, and have no intention of slowing down. And so we use our expertise as counselors. I mostly do marriage counseling. Raquel does marriage counseling and coaching also. And we want to use what God has given us, this wonderful gift that God has given both of us, in having a healthy marriage, and also to be trained counselors to help other persons to grow in their relationship with each other, and so that they can enjoy healthy and fruitful relationships as God intended. So we are leaving for now, but we will be back next 2 weeks from now. We will be back with another lively discussion.
Actually, first and third.
First
And
and
third
third
Fridays.
and third Fridays, we are here with these kind of discussions that are geared towards helping people live better relationships. So wherever you are joining from, we thank you for being with us tonight, and we look forward to having you again on another episode of Level Up Your Marriage. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Take care.
They can never take the love out in this place. They can never take the love out.
Lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Never be lacking in zeal.
Shalom, shalom. Double grace and peace be unto each and every one of you who are gathered here today on this beautiful day. It is indeed. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. You are tuned in to Inspirational Thoughts on this beautiful Monday morning. I am Dexter Honoré, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to you, especially to those who are tuned in for the first time, and for those of you who look forward to this program on a daily basis. I do appreciate each and every trust and hope and pray that the program will continue to inspire each and every one of us to do better and to be better. And that is the objective of Inspirational Thoughts. Inspirational Thoughts is geared to convert thoughts into words with the intent to motivate and inspire each and every one of us to do better and to be better. I believe we can do better and we can be better. Do you believe this? If we are going to do better and be better, it is important that we feed ourselves with the right things and we associate ourselves with the right. Having the wrong people in your life can lead you to destruction. However, if you have the right people in your life, it could lead you to prosperity, and it definitely could lead you to eternity. This morning, we are going to look at a psalm that I will disclose at a later date, a later time. Nonetheless, I trust that we are all elated and we are thankful that we're able to see and experience this new day. Today is Psalm Monday. Today is every Monday we embark on looking at a psalm, reading it, and hopefully dissecting and extracting from that particular psalm that we hope will inspire and motivate each and every one of us. Before we go for any further, please, if you're able, bow with me as we give thanks to Almighty God. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. We humbly bow ourselves before you this day because of who you are. You are the God of the heavens, you're the God of the earth. You are the Lord of each and every one of us, dear Father. And we give you thanks for waking us up this morning and allowing us to experience this new day, Father. Please take full control, take total control, dear Father. Guide us, lead us, dear Father. That you will lead us this morning to people who are in need of your words, people who are in need of. We also ask that you will guide our feet, that we may meet the right people, people who will encourage and motivate us to do better and to be better, dear Father. Guide our speech this morning, and may we utter words that will build up as opposed to words that will break down, dear Father. Help us to be each other's keeper. Help us to look out for one another. Help us, dear Father, to be that helping hand, dear God, for those who are in need, dear Father. Bless us this day and continue to guide us. In your Son's Yahshua's name we pray. Amen and amen. Greetings, saludo. Greetings to each and every one. This morning, the quote for the day is very simple, but I believe it is profound. And as I'd like for you to dissect this quotation, listen carefully and analyze it, interpret it, and share your thoughts in the comment section. Share your thoughts in the comment section. The quote for the day is: humility is dependence on God, as pride is independence of Him. The humble soul is always the thankful soul. And I want to quote this again: humility is dependence on God, as pride is independence of Him. The humble soul is always the thankful soul. What are your thoughts on this quotation? I believe it means a lot and it says a lot. And I trust more so that we will apply this quotation in our lives. May we continue to depend. May we continue to rely on God as our source of strength, as our source of hope. May we continue to be thankful every day, because each and every day we are able to inhale oxygen and feel the sun on our backs, and feel the warm air. And based on, depending on your locality, the air may be a little bit cold. If you're able to experience this, God has been good to you, and therefore we ought to give him thanks always. This morning we are going to look at the topic under the shadows of Almighty. Under the shadows of the Almighty. Can someone please highlight in the chat where this is coming from? Please highlight in the chat where this is coming from. I know that there are many of you who are tuned in regularly who are Bible students. You guys are students of the Word, and therefore would be familiar to many of you. And if you're familiar with this song, with this psalm, please type in the chat where this topic is coming from. What we're going to do this morning, and after we're through reading, we're going to dissect and extract a few thoughts from this particular psalm that I hope will serve us of encouragement to each and every one of us. I am reading from the King James Version of the Bible, and I will disclose the psalm after you put your comments in the comments section this morning. He that dwelleth in the secret place high shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His trust shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth in noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh to thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under foot. Because he have set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he have known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and shew him my salvation. This is the psalm for this morning. Now, the challenge is to highlight this psalm. Where is this psalm? What is the number of this psalm? Please share your thoughts in the comment section this morning. But this is one of the psalms that I love. This is one of the psalms that I appreciate. And it is a popular psalm. It is one known by many. I know for certain my mother would know this psalm because she enjoys reading the book of Psalms. There are people who read the book of Psalms every single day. And this is not by accident. This is because of the wealth of information that can be found in these books, in these letters, the encouragement, the psalms, the songs, the poetry that can be found in this particular book is simply second to none. And I just saw a comment coming up. Good morning, that is Sister Silda. Bon dia, Contabai. And you are correct. A Salmo 91, that is Psalms 91. That is definitely correct. The first person who commented got it right. So this particular psalm holds a particular place in my heart because it speaks about assurance. It speaks about trust. It speaks of dependence. It speaks of protection. And when we speak on the subject of protection, I believe we are all in need of protection. Protection against the enemy. Those of us who are members of the Lord's body, we are truly in need of protection because we are always under attack. And believer of God, or you believe in God, you trust in Him, then you are definitely under the radar of the devil. He's looking for you, and his purpose is not to hug and kiss you, but his objective is to destroy you. The Bible tells us that the devil is like a roaring lion walking about seeking whom he may devour. And therefore we are in need of safety. And where we place ourselves, where we station ourselves, will determine if we are going to be secure or not, if we are going to be safe and sound. Where you, where I position myself is going to determine a lot. And I want to encourage us this morning that we should position ourselves right. We need to position ourselves under the mighty arms of the Lord. We need to find ourselves under the shadows of the Almighty. And that's what the psalmist writer is speaking about. But he highlights quite a few things that we are going to seek to unfold and uncover this morning. But let us look at verse number 1. Listen to what the psalmist writer is saying. The psalmist writer is saying, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Very powerful, comforting verse number 1 of Psalm 91. But I want for us to make a quick observation here. In order for us to, to position ourselves right, that is under the shadows of the Almighty, and by Almighty we know that it is making reference to Abba Father. It is making reference to Yahweh or Yahuwah, shortened, which is more accurate, Yah. If we are going to find ourselves positioned right under the shadow of the Almighty, there are a few things that we need to do. We can't just live anyhow and expect the Lord to provide the protection, the shelter that we need. And if we were to spend a little more time to look at the word shadow and what it really means, I believe it can blow your mind. But let us just for a moment understand and look at it from this perspective. When the sun is extremely hot, if you're able to find some shadow, if you're able to just stand under a tree for a brief moment, you're going to be protected from the sun. And the concept that is being presented in this very first verse highlights protection. When we are positioned right, we are going to receive the protection that we need. So, but in order to receive that protection, the Bible tells us, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High. So, in order for us to be positioned right, we must first consider where we dwell. We must first consider where we spend the most time. And it is possible for us to dwell in a place where the devil can consume us, the devil can devour us. But the author here is reminding us and encouraging us, and is saying, he that dwelleth in the secret place. So this is written in a positive sense. It is saying to us that he that dwells, it suggests that the individual is already dwelling in that secret place of the Most High, right? This individual shall abide. To abide means to stay, to remain. Folks, it is imperative that we understand the importance of abiding under the shadows of the Almighty. We have to be willing to stay put. There are of us, it's like we have fire under our feet or ants under biting our feet, and therefore we cannot stay or remain in that position where we have the protection. We are easily misdirected, misguided. We follow the pattern of this world. We are interested in the things of this world, and therefore they catch our attention and causes us to migrate at times. But it is important for us to understand the need and the importance of abiding under the shadows of the Almighty. Let us look at Psalm 17 and verse number 8. Psalm 17 and verse number 8. I do have the Lick Finger copy of the Bible. That is how it is. One brother addressed, the Bible, that you turn the pages, the lick finger. You have to lick your fingers to turn the pages. And some of the older folks will understand that terminology. In verse number 8 of Psalm 17, the Bible tells us, keep me as the apple of thine eyes. Hide me under the shadows of thy wings. So what we're able to see here, that this is not the first time that the psalmist writer is making reference to shadow. It is not the first time he's talking about under the wings of the Almighty. And under his wings there are protection, or there is protection. Listen to what the psalmist writer is saying in verse number 2. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Now, And that verse is important. And if we connect it to verse number 1, we're going to see the relevance. And I'm going to try to do this very quickly. Where when the author says, I will say to the Lord, He is my refuge. Folks, in order to abide under the shadows of the Almighty, in order to remain in that position, you must be willing to trust Him. If there is no trust, if there is doubt, then you are definitely going to move. You're definitely going to gradually move away from that shadow. But one of the things that causes us to remain, that would develop that stick to it mentality and attitude is trust. Trust is of great importance. Listen again to what the psalmist writer is saying. I will say of the Lord. So he's speaking of the Lord. What is he saying about the Lord? He's saying that the Lord is his refuge. And we understand the idea behind this word refuge, right? It is a place of safety. Not only that, but he says, and my fortress, and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Listen to verse number 3. The Bible tells us in verse number 3, he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. Listen, not only is this psalm talking about protection, but it is also speaking about deliverance. Are you in need of some deliverance this morning? Are you going through a situation in your life that is burdening, keeping you down, and you need some deliverance? Then, if you are in need of deliverance, then may I recommend Abba Father, because He is able, is more than capable of delivering you from the situation that you are in. But let us pay attention closely to a few words in this verse. Surely he shall deliver. And I love this word, surely. That means we can depend on him. That means we can trust him because he can do what he says he can do. So surely he will deliver from the snare of the fowler. Now, who is a fowler or what is a fowler? I took the opportunity to look up this word. And a fowler is someone who hunts birds. Now, this was dominant, fowlers were dominant in Egypt and also in Philistine, right? Their objective was to catch birds and deliver them to different people. They used different methods to catching those birds. They used a method called a gin, where there would be like a rope. They would set a bait, and when that bird gets there, then a rope would also cages where it would cover the bird and they would have an access point to get that bird, right? So a fowler is one who uses catches birds. And in order to do so, he uses snares or he uses traps. So when the Bible says, surely he shall deliver thee from the snare or the trap of the fowler. Now, whenever this term was used, it was used in reference to evil people. Another term that we could use, a more dominant to our time, bad-minded people. So it's using that in a sense to make reference to evil people, people who are doing bad things, right? So in that context, he's not making reference. He's using this as a metaphor to make reference to individuals who are evil, who are setting snares and traps for us as though we are birds. Now, that is evil. And if we are real and if we pay attention to our society, we will realize that there are some bad minded, evil people who are setting snares for us, especially those who desire to live godly, those who desire to live by the word of God. There are individuals in our lives, and notice carefully what I'm saying, in our lives. Some of the people, they're so bad-minded and evil, they befriend us. They make us feel comfortable, but in essence, their objective is to destroy us. That is why I would repeatedly say that we need to be mindful and aware of the people that we allow to come in our lives, the people we associate ourselves with, because not everyone is there to bring you your birthday cake. There are some who are there to set snares because they want to see you fall. They want to catch you in a position so that they can use that position against you. But the Bible is saying and assuring us by using the term, surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. Now, due to time, it is already 8:40, and we have another program coming on this morning at 9 a.m. entitled Amen for Men. But I would like for us to take a closer look at the term pestilence, right? Look up this word and let me know what are your thoughts, or what are your findings in our next session. But due to time, let us continue reading and let us just extract a few quick points there, a few quick thoughts. Listen, verse number 5, it says, thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Folks, let us go back to verse number 2, which speaks about trust, right? If we trust God, then we are definitely not going to be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flieth by day. Why? Because we know who our defense is. We know who is our shield. We know who is our protector. And if we trust in him, then guess what? We are going to stand behind that shield. We are going to Almighty, because we know that he is capable of providing the protection and the deliverance that we need. He's able to deliver us from our enemies. But I love what the author says and how he says it, by day and by night, or by night and by day. Let me tell you this: the enemy is not selective and is not just going to come at you during the night. He's going to come at you in broad daylight. That is how deceptive and evil the fowlers are. They will come by day and they will come by night. That means, folks, we are not safe in the night and we are not safe in the day. But we can be safe in the night and we can be safe in the day if we abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And if we trust in him, if we believe in him. And listen, the scripture did not stop there, It did not just talk about the terror by day and the arrows that fly, the terror by night and the arrows that fly by day, but he continues in verse number 6. He says, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Folks, the author here is putting these things in this thing into perspective. And is helping us understand that the snare, the fowler, and his trap, let me tell you, he is not going to just leave you for a moment. He's always at you. And there are different times that he's going to come. But verse number 7 tells us, 1,000 shall fall at thy side. 1,000. We keep it in context. He's talking about the evil ones that is described as a fowler. There 1,000, they're going to fall by your side. Why? Because of who or whom your trust is in. But the offer continues by saying, 10,000 at thy right hand, right? But it shall not come nigh unto thee. Folks, when we are positioned right, when we are under the shadow of the Almighty, the enemy, they are going to come, but they won't be able to come near you. They won't be able to touch God's anointed. Am I encouraging someone this morning? Am I inspiring someone this morning to abide under the shadows of the Almighty? Folks, there is immense safety and deliverance when we are in Christ, when we are in God, when we're living and trusting Him every single day. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, 10,000 at thy right hand. So they're going to come from the left, they're going to come from the right. But I love what the Bible says, but it shall not come near thee. So let me tell you, folks, it doesn't matter if it is 1, 2, and the Bible did not use 1 or 2. The Bible used 1,000 and 10,000. That just explains and shows how magnificent and mighty our God is. He is not just able to protect you from 1 or 2 of your enemies, but He's able to protect you from come to your right, they will come to your left, but they will not come near you because of where you are, because of your position, because of whom you trust in. Abide, folks, under the shadow of the Almighty. Listen to verse number 8. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. You see, they're not going to come near you, but you are going to be able to see who they are and their rewards. Folks, we serve a mighty God. We serve an awesome God. And listen to why all of these things are going to happen. Why they're not going to be able to come near you. Why you are only going to be able to see their reward. Listen, 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 listen. Did I say listen? Yes, I want to say it again. Listen. Verse number 9. Watch it with me if you have your Bibles. Listen to what the author says. Because thou hast made God, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. Folks, the only way we are going to receive the protection of our refuge when we make Him our habitation. Habitation simply means a dwelling place. When we allow Him to dwell in our lives. Now, the power is in each and every one of us. We can decide whether or not we're going to make the Lord our refuge, whether or not we are going to make Him, our habitation, the one in whom we dwell. We have that choice. So the choice is yours this morning. The choice is mine. And we could either choose to make the Lord our refuge and have the protection and deliverance that we need, or we can refuse Him and therefore leaving ourselves vulnerable. The terror by night is going to affect us. The arrows that fleeth by day, they're going to affect us. The pestilence that walketh in dark, the destruction that wasteth at noonday, they will affect us. But if we are protected, if we are protected, if we abide under the shadows of the Almighty, then we're going to have the protection and the guidance and the deliverance that we need. Listen to verse number 10. I love that verse as well. The Bible says, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh at thy dwelling. Folks, we ought to pay attention to these verses, because as the offer closes up, he's giving us that assurance. He's letting us know that, hear what? Once your trust is in God, once you abide under the shadows of the Almighty, then all of these rewards are going to be yours. For there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh. So listen, folks. Listen, folks. No plague is going to come nigh or close to your dwelling. That means they can't even get close enough to touch you. Verse 11. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. You see, not only does the Lord provide the guidance and the protection and the deliverance that we so in need or desperately in need of, the Bible is saying that he also provides assistance. Send an assistant to us. I've heard in times past about guiding angels, angels that are assigned to us, that provides protection that we need. And the psalmist writer is explaining that and showing this to us. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways, not thy ways, but all of thy ways. Listen, they shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon lions and adder, the long lion and the dragon shall thou trample on the feet. Listen, what is the Bible saying there? Speaking of deliverance, speaking of protections, but it's also speaking of victory. I hope we're able to see that. It is also speaking of victory. Jesus, the Lord, Abba, Father, Yahweh, is going to provide us with. So we are going to tread on the lion and the adder. The long lion and the dragon shall tremble. Thou shalt trample on the feet. And because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he have known my name. Call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Folks, this is not something that you have to start and stop. It is something that you need to be steadfast in. It is something that you have to continue in every single day. We have to determine to abide under the shadows of the Almighty every single day. And that is what I want to share with us this morning. Psalm 91. Abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Are you abiding under the shadow of the Almighty? If you are, then you're going to have protection, you're going to have deliverance, and you're going to have victory, folks. But in order to receive these things, you have to put your trust in the Lord. You have to believe in him, and you must abide. You must abide. Don't allow the world to you. Don't allow friends to distract you. Remain on your path. Remain steadfast unto the end, and you will receive that crown of life. Folks, it was a pleasure being with you this morning, discussing, or looking at Psalm 91. Remember, every Monday we do a Psalm. Psalms Monday, or Psalm Monday, I would like to call it. And today we have looked at Psalm 91. Those of you who are now tuning in, you missed a bit, but it's okay. You can always go back and review the video. And I do hope and pray that something was said that would have served as a source of encouragement to each and every one of you. Thank
For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave. Whatsoever